Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Smart Indian Agriculture on the Federal.com. I am Vivian Fernandez. Rice is a crop that is cultivated across India. It is the largest produced crop, the most consumed, and one that engages the most number of farmers. India is also among the top rice exporters. Rice is a versatile crop. It can be grown in irrigated conditions, in rain fed lowlands, in areas prone to flooding, and in uplands. But the cultivation of rice results in emissions of methane and carbon dioxide. Rice contributes to climate change and is affected by it. To discuss how rice can be adapted to climate change and the status of adaptation in India so far, we have with us Dr. A.K. Singh, Director of Indian Agricultural Research Institute, Delhi. IARI is a premier research institute in agriculture and was a site of the Green Revolution in the 1960s. Dr. Singh has specialized in rice breeding, genetics, and molecular breeding. He has led teams of researchers in developing several widely cultivated basmati rice varieties. Dr. Singh, thank you very much for making the time. We know that it's a very busy schedule that you have, but you're welcome to this program and thank you very much.
Thank you, Vivian. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. Thank you.
Dr. Singh, farmers have produced more rice with higher yielding disease-resistant varieties through intensive cultivation. But intensive cultivation has degraded the soil and depleted the aquifers. So can we grow rice the way we have been growing it all along?
Well, this is one of the major challenges that rice farming and sustenance of rice farming is facing. We know that the transplanted rice requires a huge amount of water, and if we quantify in terms of per kilogram of rice produced, it takes about 3,000 to 4,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of rice. The rice farming under puddled condition, that is transplanted condition, evolved over a period of time for one very important reason, that rice is infested by so many weeds. And after transplanting, in the transplanted rice, generally we keep the field with stagnated water about 10 centimeter to 15 centimeter. And that is done for from transplanting to next 20 days. And therefore, the water stagnating in the field suppresses weed upcoming in the field. And therefore, the water was basically used as a herbicide to control weed under transplanted condition. But it's sure that the water table has declined substantially in the areas, particularly say Punjab, Haryana. In Punjab, in 70s, the average water table was about 10 meter, which has gone to 30 meter now. So the water consumption into summer paddy cultivation and cultivation of paddy as such by transplanting method has been a major concern. And if rice farming has to sustain, we have to adopt to alternative methods of rice farming, and the method is direct.
Yes, Dr. Singh, I will come to the alternate methods of rice cultivation. But before that, rice consumption is increasing. First of all, it's increasing in Asia because population is increasing in Asia. We also find that in Africa, people are switching over from other cereals to rice. And within our own country, because our population is increasing, one, rice consumption will increase. And people who were not well off, as their prosperity increases, they will consume more of rice. Of course, they'll consume proteins as well. And there are people who are consuming coarse cereals. They are shifting to rice. One is also because rice is available in the public distribution system. So through a combination of population increase, prosperity, as well as policy, we find that more rice is going to be consumed, isn't it?
Well, you are right on that fact that rice consumption is going to increase. Currently, India's rice production is about 121 million tons. And out of that, we are exporting roughly 21 million tons, with a total volume of export of 21 million tons. And in terms of value, the basmati export was 38,000 crores, around 4.7 million tons, and non-basmati was rest, about 18 million tons. So not only domestic consumption, also the demand from the export market is increasing because more and more countries are looking forward towards India for producing rice. But, the government has taken initiative to celebrate the year 2023 as International Year of Millet. And one of the attempts is to make people aware to also make particularly the millets, what we call Sri Anna, as part of their regular diet, and that with great nutrition and should happen. But it is true that rice demand is going to increase, and therefore we have to evolve in terms of technology, production technology, particularly so that we have enough rice for our people and also for the global export.
Mhm. Sir, you mentioned that rice uses a lot of water, 3,000 liters per kg, you mentioned. But is this a problem across the country, or is it a problem only in certain pockets? For example, in the eastern area, where we have India, where we have a lot of rain, I don't see any problem in growing rice the way we have been growing rice.
Well, that's true. So that's about the availability of underground water and the rainwater. It's more so, particularly when we talk of Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP, and this is the belt which is producing almost rice production. You see, 3 million hectare area is grown to rice in Punjab, and with average yield of 5 tons paddy, you produce 15 million tons of paddy in Punjab, and roughly 12 lakh hectare, 1.2 million hectare in Haryana. So, but these states are not what is called rice consuming states. Whatever is produced is primarily, it goes into the public distribution system. And this is where the water is a major problem, and the rainfall is also not so high in this particular region. But if we go to eastern India, but with the climatic change, the distribution pattern of rainfall is getting drastically affected. It is not uniform throughout the cropping season. Now, if you miss the critical stage, for example, transplanting of paddy in eastern UP, Bihar, West Bengal, this area is now on. And if you don't get water for next 15 days, if there is no rain, for example, then the entire transplanting process will be affected. You will not be able to even transplant rice. So by and large, then it becomes dependent on the availability of the rain water. The nurseries sometimes become as old as 30 days, 40 days, 50 days, but there is no water for transplanting. So their water is available, but the distribution and availability of water when it is required is still a challenge, and that also we have to address by making availability of water through other means and improvising the production technology so that the timely cultivation is adopted.
Mm-hmm. So one is, of course, the impact of rice on the water table. That is very well understood. But secondly, rice also in puddle conditions produce methane. And according to the World Meteorological Organization, it made an assessment in 2021 that rice paddies contribute 8% of methane emissions that arise from human activity. So on the one hand, we have overuse of water, overdrawal of water from the aquifers. On the other hand, we also have methane emissions, which are earth warming. So, are you saying that all over across the country we must shift from puddled cultivation to some other method?
Well, so when it comes to the methane emission from rice paddy field, the earlier predictions by global estimates from Indian paddy field was about 37 million tons. But the work done at IARI under leadership of late Professor S.K. Sinha and subsequent team members, Dr. Pathak and others, we have done countrywide wet lab estimation, capturing from the rice paddy field throughout the country, measuring the methane emission, and this has been brought to about 3.7 million ton, which is globally accepted. So it is not as much culprit as it has been projected in past, but nevertheless, methane emission does take place in puddle condition, and the DSR will definitely help reducing the methane cultivation. Wherever water availability is there, one can still go with the transplanting situations to the extent possible. But in that situation also, it is very well established that it is not necessary to keep water stagnated all the time. Rice doesn't require that kind of water. It was only done for weed management. If we have effective weed management strategy, we can use alternate drying, wetting methods. We can go for DSR, and we can have as much as yield of rice as we get in the transplanted condition. So
DSR is of course direct seeded rice. Can you tell us how rice is grown in direct seeded conditions?
So direct seeded rice cultivation is just like cultivation of wheat. Generally, what we do, there are two methods of direct seeded rice cultivation. One is wet DSR, which can be done in those areas where the water is available in plenty. After puddling the soil, you need not to go for transplanting, you just go for broadcasting the seed. But that is not really going to save water, as we are assuming that DSR will bring in more water saving. The other method is dry DSR.
But why is that, say? Is that because once you have what you call allowed the water to stand in the field before sowing, you got to drain that water?
No, that's because why people go for wet DSR is the transplanting cost is more. Per acre, you have to spend about 3,000, 4,000 rupees for the labor for transplanting. But if you go for broadcasted method of DSR or drum seeding, that labor can be saved, and you save on the cost of cultivation there. So that's the primary reason for wet DSR. Coming to dry DSR method, which is generally practiced in the soils which are sandy, loam to loam soil, not very heavy soil, and particularly the entire Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, and Eastern India is suited for DSR condition. And in case of direct seeded rice, what is done that first, after wheat is harvested, field is plowed with the available moisture, and then when the time of sowing comes, the field is irrigated. Pre-sowing irrigation is given, and when the field comes in condition, it is plowed, planked 2-3 times, and then there are seed drills specially designed. Of different seed drills are designed, which is one is Lucky seed drill, other is BBC, and so many other machineries have come up. Using those seed drills, you can take up sowing just like wheat with the tractor. The only thing is that the sowing window for the direct seeded rice is before onset of monsoon. So that's like something, it starts on 25th of May and should be completed by 20th to 25th of June. Because after that, once the rain comes, then you will not be able to prepare the field. And because of the soil becoming wet, the sowing cannot be taken. So when we go for direct seeded rice, the most important challenge is weed emergence. And for weed control, immediately after sowing, we apply a herbicide called pendimethalin, which is a pre-emergence herbicide. And after 25 days of the crop, 20 to 25 days, another herbicide called Nominee Gold with Spiribac sodium that is applied. So if these two herbicides are applied timely, weed is effectively controlled. Now, another challenge that comes in direct seeded rice is that after sowing, immediately if there is a rain, and sometimes unseasonal rain, this time it has happened, throughout, you could see the entire May was raining. So soon after sowing, if rain happens, then there is a crust formation on the surface of the soil, and then the seedlings are not able to emerge out. So that suffers the poor population and plant stand, and it affects the yield. So therefore, we have to take this care. And once these cares are taken, then the establishment of direct seeded rice field is as good as transplanted rice, and a large number of farmers this time. Government is also promoting, for example, about 4,000 rupees per acre incentive is given if one is shifting from a crop to transplanted rice to DSR in Haryana, and also 7,000 rupees per acre if shift is there from rice to another crop like maize or other crops. Likewise, there are support system available in other states also. So DSR is peaking. Provided we are
But
able
sir, you said DSR is peaking, but that's not the case in Haryana, in Punjab, for example. Last year, I think the target was only 14% of the target was met. And this year, I think it is even less. Why are farmers not taking to DSR?
Right. So that's a very good question you have asked. And I said that the problem number one, the plant stand has to be maintained. Second is weed control, effective weed control. In spite of these herbicides, which I mentioned being available, still the weed control is not sometimes to the extent it is required. And that is where I think we are also working on alternative technologies of coming out with the herbicide tolerant rice varieties, which can provide a very effective weed management system. And this will be a boon for direct seeded rice farming. So in this case, there are varieties which we have developed recently, and also countrywide research is happening, that these varieties are tolerant to a particular herbicide called imijathapir. And imijathapir is a broad range herbicide. It kills all the weeds which is present in the rice field. And because of this, it provides very effective weed control. It's a very safe molecule. It is much cheaper if you use the combination of pendimethalin and nominee gold. That will cost around 1,500 to 1,800 rupees per acre. But imidacloprid cost is about 500. So 1/3 of the cost, and one is spray, very effective control. It comes. We have developed.
And this herbicide tolerance has been achieved without genetic modification technology.
Yes, this is simple conventional mutation breeding technology. Using mutations, we have been able to identify certain genes which are responsible for herbicide tolerance. And with that modification, these varieties have been developed, and they have been now, the gene has been transferred into two basmati varieties, Pusa Basmati 1121, Pusa Basmati 1509. And my colleague at National Rice Research Institute, Indian Institute of Rice Research, Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, they are also working on transferring the gene into non-basmati varieties, so that we have a range of product available with herbicide tolerance, and that can take care of weed management under direct seeded condition.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that rice is anatomically suited for cultivation in puddled condition because it has those roots and so on and so forth. So when it is grown, when it is cultivated in dry conditions, would it suffer a shock? Will there not be a loss of output?
No, we have done extensive studies on this, growing the crop side by side under direct seeded rice as well as under transplanted rice. What you mentioned about is the root respiration system. How do root of rice respire when it is under flooded condition? Because it has got a special anatomical structure called parenchyma cells, and they are able to, as long as even a single leaf of rice is on the top of water, even under submergence condition, it will survive. But if it is completely submerged, then the survival of rice plant is not there. But it does not mean that it always requires to be grown under stagnated water. In fact, as a matter of fact, we never scientifically recommend the rice to be grown under stagnated water. It should be alternate drying and wetting method. The next irrigation should be done before the crack formation happens in the soil, because once the crack formation happens in the soil, then if you do irrigation, the water will percolate down. So I think that's the only borderline. Otherwise, shifting to DSR will bring a saving of about 35% of irrigation, 35% less greenhouse gas emission, and about 4,000 rupees per acre for transplanting. So cost of cultivation is reduced. Contribution towards greenhouse gases is also reduced by 1/3. And these are the major advantages of going for direct seeded rice. Environmentally, it is safe. And also, one most important thing, when we do puddling in the field, then there is a hard pan formation on the soil surface that happens because of extensive puddling. And as a result, when we irrigate, the water stagnates on the top. And that water is subjected to then evaporation loss. Heavy evaporation loss happens. While in case of direct seeded rice, the capillary action in the soil is not broken, right? They are intact. So whatever water we provide as in form of irrigation, it percolates down to recharges the groundwater then and there. So it saves water in that way also. And also the crop becomes about a week to 10 days early as compared to transplanted rice. That happens because in transplanted rice, when you uproot the seedlings and replant them, it gives them a shock. So that shock absorbance, takes about a week time. And in case of this, we are doing sowing directly, and the crop establishes, and therefore it reduces duration by 1 week to 10 days.
So when you broadcast the seed or when you plant the seed, do you use germinated rice or do you use non-germinated rice?
So generally, in all these cases, even in direct seeded rice, when we are going for broadcasting, we use pre-sprouted seeds in case of wet DSR. In dry DSR, we do soak seeds for 24 hours so that they imbibe water and plenty of water is available. Their physiological activity is initiated. At the same time, seed is also treated with fungicide because to protect them from the infection from the fungal pathogen. But we don't allow to sprout them because the sowing is to be done by machine in seed drill, and it has to move in the the sowing devices. and if it is sprouted, those sprouts will break, and therefore that will affect the germinability.
No, but what if it is broadcast?
Broadcast is perfectly fine. There, sprouted seed is used. Even for putting nursery for transplanted paddy, when we grow nursery, we generally advise that we should go for sprouted seed, because it facilitates germination immediately after sowing. And second, if you have brought seed from somewhere and seed is not from authentic source, many times if you have sown and then you come to know the seed was not good, germination is very poor. Here you would know firsthand that seed has germinated, that means seed quality is good. And after also it expedited the process of germination.
Sir, I mean, rice plants normally absorb iron in the form of, in a ferrous form, but in aerobic conditions, that is not the case. I mean, iron is not available in the ferrous form. So won't that make rice deficient in iron? And will that not affect the nutrition levels of people who consume rice, who are generally anemic? I mean, the poor people who are anemic. So is there a way in which you can address this issue?
So this is a concern, and we are quite aware about it. In puddle condition, it is a reduced form, so rice is available in the iron is available in the ferrous form. But when it comes to direct seeded rice, plenty of oxygen available, it gets converted to ferric form, and ferric form is immediately not available. But there are ways and means we are working through breeding mechanism. Moreover, it is a factor of what kind of soil you are growing. If you are growing this in a very light soil, then iron deficiency becomes a expression of iron deficiency comes, which is manifested in terms of yellowing of the seedlings. We advise to spray iron sulfate in that case, or seed coating with some iron molecules. If that is done, then it takes initial care of the germinating seedlings. But once the roots have developed and they penetrate down, then there is no problem. Then this is taken. The only problem is first few days of establishment. And also we are developing varieties through breeding mechanisms which excrete certain exudates from the roots, and that helps in better availability of iron, because iron is available in the soil, but in a dissolved form to be uptaken by the plant. These root exudates from the plants helps in better iron absorption.
So to just catch up with what you have said so much. Water saving is about 35%, you said.
Yes.
Now, this may not matter to those farmers who do not pay by the volume of water consumed. If they pay a fixed charge per horsepower, then they will not bother about water unless they are very ecologically conscious. But you also said that there is a saving in labor cost, and labor is not, of course, available in many parts of the country. So the labor saving is the main incentive, you are saying. But isn't there a cost in terms of the spraying of herbicides? So net, will the farmers benefit if they do direct seeded rice?
Oh yes, sure. Because in otherwise also in normal transplanted paddy, farmers are using herbicide. It is not that they are not using. Okay, if they are doing DSR without herbicide tolerant rice, then they are also using herbicide, pendimethalin, and Nomnigold. In transplanted rice also, machete is used soon after transplanting, and 18-20 days after this, Nomnigold is sprayed to control weed, because manual weeding is really difficult. You see why it happens that even if you have to use water for controlling weeds, many places water is not. You are talking about Eastern India. So there, if you want to stagnate water, standing water in the field, it has to depend only on the rains, because you don't have supporting irrigation system available, and then crop gets completely filled with weed. So even in transplanted rice, herbicides are being used. Okay. So the cost of herbicide in direct seeded rice with the new generation technology is much lesser. Overall benefit in terms of saving of water, and this also is something that needs to be educated to farmers. They will realize, because whenever I talk to farmers, I tell that you remember what kind of land you have inherited from your father and grandfather and great-grandparent, and what kind of land you are going to pass on to your next generation. And this is your duty and responsibility, that you should not put the coming generation into trouble. And therefore, farmers have started realizing it. It's not that, more and more education is given, they realize. Only thing, technology support is important. If they don't get proper plant stand, if they don't get effective weed control, then obviously they will be deterred from using this. So technology becomes of paramount importance.
So prolonged dry spells are not the only issue with climate change. With extreme weather events, we have seen a few days of intense downpour. So what do we do in those conditions when, for example, there's flooding and the rice plants remain underwater for many days or even 1 or 2 weeks? So do we have plants that can survive in such conditions?
Well, so before that, I think I would also like to address like what kind of climate change scenario we are expecting in times to come, and then after that I will come to the adaptation strategies that we are working on and how we can help that. So if I at IARI we have been working on taking the average of 30 years from the period of 1976 to 2005, and this data for this temperature. Minimum maximum temperature from 1204 grids of 50 by 50 kilometers each throughout the country. Based on this temperature data, the predictions using the various climate change models have been developed, the global climate models, and it is predicted that in Kharif season the minimum temperature will increase from 0.96 to 1.06 degrees Celsius by 2039, and it will increase by 1.36 to 4 degrees Celsius by 2090, by end of this century. Also, if you look at the maximum temperature during Kharif season, is expected to rise from 0.74 to 0.85 by 2039, and by 1.26 to 3.5 degrees Celsius by 2099. So this is the kind of temperature prediction, increase in temperature which is predicted. And also it is predicted that rise in minimum temperature will be more than the rise in maximum temperature. Rainfall increase by 2 to 3% by 2039, 5 to 10% by 2069. This 30-year period I'm talking about, and 5 to 19% by 2019, with increased dry spell and extreme rainfall events. So this is a real problem that you see this year itself. In this month, we had 1 day rain of 90 millimeters, and then you have a dry spell. So that kind of rain is not going to help, because you cannot harvest that kind of rainwater for immediate uses, and therefore the emphasis on Amrit Sarovar scheme, where the rainwater has to be harvested, preserved, and used for irrigation as required, is important. The increase in north and northwestern India will be more, followed by central and coastal India, and variability will be more in north and northwestern India. The irrigated rice is likely to have 3 to 5% reduction in yield if we do not use any adaptation strategy. Likewise, irrigated rice in Haryana, Karnataka, Kerala, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal is to be affected more. And the mitigation strategy which we think of adopting, for example, short duration varieties, nitrogen management, water management, these things are extremely important. These are a few things that I said, what is the impact that global climate change is likely to have. But then how are we preparing ourselves in terms of research and development to address these issues? And this cannot be addressed only through development of varietal technology, but a whole range of technology for management. And that's where, for example, as far as the varieties are concerned, as you know that the number of insect pest diseases are also evolving in numbers, in types, with the climate change. And
that is right, because last year, for example, we had this dwarfing virus in Punjab.
Yeah, southern streak dwarf black rice virus, and that was a major problem which was never experienced in India. As a matter of fact, the first time it was noticed in big way. So far we have not received any information, but I'm keeping my finger crossed. I have been advising from day one to the farmers to be careful about it, to control the virus by controlling the vector, because vector for this virus, Fiji virus, is the white back plant hopper, and if we control the vector, then we can control the viral disease. Now, in breeding strategy, we have developed number of varieties with resistance to bacterial blight disease, blast disease, and also gall maize. And these varieties have been deployed. A large number of such varieties have been developed. I will not be able to name those varieties. At the same time, when we come to abiotic factors, there are total 15 varieties in the recent past have been developed with having abiotic stress tolerance genes. And 2 of these varieties are with drought tolerance in Basmati. Last year, we released a variety, Pusa Basmati 1882, which has got a gene from land race upland variety Nagina 22 for drought tolerance. And likewise, DRR Dhan 42 has been developed in the background of IR 64 with a drought tolerant QTL, 2 QTLs for drought tolerant. The second major problem is submergence, where there is excess rain and the water doesn't recedes, and the crop after transplanting has to stay in submerged condition for about 12 days. And there, one gene which was originally isolated from a variety called FR13A from Odisha, and this gene was later, mapped, tagged, and it has been transferred through marker-assisted breeding to a large number of rice varieties, and varieties like Swarna Sub-1, Samba Sub-1, CR 1009 Sub-1, Ranjit Sub-1, Bahadur Sub-1, Co 43 Sub-1, and IR 64 Sub-1 have been developed. Also, CR Dhan 803, which has got submergence tolerance has been developed. Also, there are efforts, you see, along with submergence, the same area sometimes suffers from drought and sometimes it suffers from more of water. And therefore, both mechanisms, submergence tolerance and drought tolerance, have been incorporated together. The genes have been transferred, and a variety called DRR Dhan 50 has been released. Another variety, CR Dhan 801, which has got QTL for drought tolerance and also submergence tolerance, has been released. Likewise, CR Dhan 802 has also got both submergence and drought tolerance.
So do we have varieties which are tolerant to seawater ingress, to salt water ingress?
Oh, yes. We have a number of varieties with salinity tolerance, where a gene called saltol, it has been transferred. Saltol gene, actually, it was taken out from a land race called Pokali. Pokali is a rice system of rice farming in Kerala. Pokali, Kaipad region, these are the 2 areas which suffer from salinity, coastal salinity, also tidal salinity. And there, this gene from Pokali has been transferred to a number of varieties to develop salt-tolerant varieties, which provide seedling stage salinity tolerance, and also some of the genes for this for reproductive stage salinity tolerance have been isolated.
So, since we are running out of time, I would like to ask you, you mentioned about all these traits, submergence tolerance and salt tolerance and all those things. These have come from, you said, heirloom varieties, land races. Now, have we mapped all the traits that are possibly available in the rice genome?
So rice genome is sequenced. We know all the genes that are present in rice genome. But this genome sequence comes from a few selected varieties, right? But many of these useful traits are present in the land races and farmers' varieties, and those varieties have not been sequenced. But using the information on rice genome sequence that is already available, it is possible to map these genes. And very recently, we have started a program with DBT support where 10,000 land races, basically farmers' varieties, and there are named land races. They were collected earlier and kept in National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources Gene Bank. For last 4 years, we have taken them out. We are doing their thorough evaluation for different characters, for disease resistance, for abiotic stress tolerance, for quality, etc. And then we are sequencing them using molecular marker to identify the specific genes, so that these can be used as a potential donor for developing future climate smart rice varieties that will address the problem of climate change and will be a major strategy for adaptation to climate change.
Since the government of India has eased the regulations or rules for gene editing, CRISPR-Cas tools, is IARI and other ICAR institutions and the state agricultural universities, are they using these technologies, these techniques?
The government of India has taken a proactive role in coming out with the regulations for the genome edited crops, in which the SDN1 and SDN2, two specific kinds of genome editing tools, have been approved as the product as non-GM after following certain procedures. And the government of India has also given a budget allocation of almost 500 crores to intensify the research on genome editing in different crops for novel traits. In rice, for example, at IARI, we have edited a variety called MTU 1010, which is a very popular variety in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. And this variety has been edited for a gene called DST, drought and salt tolerance. And the edited lines has got a significant yield improvement under the stress condition. And this is first time that a genome edited crop has been given for testing in the All India Coordinated trial after clearing all the requirements from the RCGM, from Institute Biosafety Committee, proving that these plants are free from exogenous DNA, which is the ultimate requirement for taking them to the field. And after that, it has been given. My other colleagues, one variety also developed from Indian Institute of Rice Research, has also gone to field trial this Kharif season 2024.
And finally, sir, before we close the program,
2023, sorry, yeah.
Rice has been indicted for the epidemic of diabetes that we see in the country, because rice has a tendency to raise blood sugar levels. So what work are we doing? I mean, are we expecting people to shift entirely out of rice is not possible. They will consume more of rice. So are we breeding rice which has less, has less glycemic load?
So excellent work is being done in this area on developing varieties with low glycemic index. Certain genes have been identified that are responsible for low glycemic index, which we are transferring to high-yielding varieties. We have mapping program from land races, many land races with the glycemic index as low as 50%, as against 85 to 90% in the normal varieties have been identified. And few low glycemic varieties have been released. Also, Madhuraj 55 is one such variety that is released. BPT 5204, although it was not bred for low glycemic index, but incidentally, this variety has got low glycemic index, about 55%. The other processes by which we can reduce the sugar load in the rice is, if you consume brown rice, the glycemic index is low because brown rice has poor digestibility, and parboiling also brings the glycemic index down, because by parboiling and also by this parboiling process, and also by using the brown rice, the digestibility is very slow, and therefore there is no sudden flux of blood sugar in the bloodstream.
So how do you achieve that? So do you achieve this by changing the proportions of the starch fractions, amylose and amylopectin?
Yes. So generally the amylose in rice is about 25% and 75% is amylopectin. If we increase the amylose load from 25% to 27, 28 or higher side, and also in amylose, we increase the proportion of resistant starch. Resistant starch is the portion of starch which is not easily digested. So these two components we are looking at to lower down the glycemic index of rice.
And that doesn't affect the palatability of rice?
No. Unless we go, reducing amylose beyond certain limits. Suppose if you make amylose 30% and more, then of course rice will become hard to cook, because amylose is something that makes it soft. 20% lower than 20%, or it can be zero amylose, then it will be very, very pasty rice, glutinous rice, what we call. 22% is most appropriate amylose level, which is found in basmati, that makes it very fluffy and soft on cooking. As we go on increasing, it becomes a little hard. So we have to keep a balance of these factors.
So, sir, just to get an overview of what is happening in the adaptation of rice to climate change, are we at a nascent stage, or have we fairly evolved on the journey?
I would say we have fairly evolved in terms of technologies. For example, one of the most important strategy is developing early duration varieties. And now in all areas, we have got varieties which can mature in 120 days. And that help in, big way in adaptation to climate change. Because at least a few irrigation you can manage, but long duration varieties have to be phased out. Shifting to direct seeded rice and breeding program is specifically tailored to develop varieties for direct seeded rice. It cannot happen that you take the varieties developed for transplanted condition and you start them growing under DSR conditions. So we have initiated breeding program with DVT funding, big project I am doing. And also in terms of agronomic practices, alternate waiting, drying, direct seeded rice. These are the strategy that are being followed. Conservation agriculture. So that will help. I would not say that we are in nascent stage, but yes, this has to be expedited at much faster rate. And with a target ahead that how much area if we can fix by say 2047, the Amrit Kal when ends, how much rice area will go into DSR and how much will still remain in the transplanted condition. So
it's no longer Amrit Kal, so it's Kartavya Kal.
Kartavya Kal. Rightly said, yes. Rightly said, it's a Kartavya Kal.
Sir, I'm sure our audience will agree that that was a stellar exposition you made, and now I understand why you won the Best Teacher Award in one of the past years. Dr. A.K. Singh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For
Thank you.
those insights.
Thank you very much.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more news and updates.